Hello, Windward, and welcome to the Pencils Down podcast. In service of our mission to remediate our students' language-based learning disabilities, we take every instructional moment seriously, and we work to be intentional in everything that we do. This podcast is an opportunity for Jamie Williamson, our head of school, to have an informal series of unscripted conversations with different members of our community about who they are, what they care about, and what the Windward School means to them. And so, we're putting our pencils down, we're closing up our computers, and we're looking forward to sharing with you another conversation today.
Well, I am really excited to be here today. I have a very special guest, and this is actually a two-parter. So we have a really large community, and there are times when we're doing things and we have two parallel sort of like spaces. And the reason we're doing a double episode is because this happens to be one of those spaces where we have this incredible parallel thing happening, right? Mm-hmm. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce this month's guest, the incredible... I would say, like, you know, if you think about Windward, there's a few folks in our community that you feel like are like kind of pillars of our community who are foundational members of this work. And Marilyn Hunt comes to mind when I think about that. So this is, and I'm not trying to embarrass you, because I know there's some folks who get into our double platinum range who don't want me to mention the number of years. Yeah. But I think you were like 3.5 when you started here.
That's right.
And so this is year 42 for you, yes, which is an incredible accomplishment, Marilyn. So I just want to say on behalf of like the entirety of our community here, like how grateful we are that you're here. One of the things that I absolutely love, and I remember having this conversation when I was like transitioning up here 6.5 years ago, actually almost 7 now, having that conversation that spring before I started, and getting a chance to hear how excited you got about building athletic programs for kids. For those of you who have not had a chance to, maybe from our lower school families, who have not had a chance to experience Marilyn Hunt at the middle school and the athletic program that she has built in her tenure, like she focuses on kids 100%, wanting to make sure that we get in there and we figure out what kids need and want, and she works to see if we can make that happen. Like, I'm kind of thinking like you're kind of the making dreams come true from the athletic side of things, right? And for those of you who also may have not had a chance to experience our field day, like you're kind of the hype woman of the century. Like you do such an amazing job getting the kids ready for field day. Like it's really a fun experience to be there. It's just electric. So thank you for everything you do for not only for our athletics program, but you are just such a wonderful member of our community. I think you bring just this boundless positive energy, and I'm so grateful every time I get a chance to have a conversation with you. It fills me up. So thank you for everything you do, Marilyn. So
thank you, Jamie, because I love being at Windward, and I always have.
Yeah.
And after 42 years, which has been a long time, I can still say I love getting up in the morning and I'm coming to work.
You know, and it shows. I do think that's something that absolutely shows. You know, a lot of schools have athletics programs, and I think Windward is actually, I think that sometimes people don't realize like how good our athletics program happens to be. Not only do we bring kids in and like really thinking about wherever kids are. For us, there's some programs that really kind of focus on this, what I will jokingly call kind of the talent identification, like pointing to the kid and saying that kid's good. Right. We have kids who are good, so we're never going to not recognize talent. But I think that the real special part about our athletics program here is how we see ourselves as kind of growers of talent, not identifiers necessarily, but trying to make sure everybody who gets on the floor, the field, whatever the medium of competition happens to be, the court. And really pushing to make sure that kid has a chance to grow while they're under your sort of like coaching and leadership in that. So, and I know your coaches all feel the same way. I just see our program just really doing some amazing things for kids. And I would guess that in your sort of space, you could do this at a lot of different places because everybody's got an athletics program, right? To some degree. So why in the world would you do that here at Windward? What brings you to this work?
Well, I have to give you a little background. When I first got out of college, I was looking for a phys ed job, and it was very limited. The phys ed field was very limited, and so I had 2 interviews, and one of them was Windward. And I pulled up to this little building that looked like a home, and when I came in and saw what everybody was doing for the kids, I thought I would love to work here.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I was so lucky and blessed when I got the job. And so then I started to work at Windward and saw what the program was, and said, this is the place for me.
Yeah.
But of course, as time goes on, you say to yourself, well, maybe I'll move on. But, it's because I would love to be an athletic director. Right around that time, Dr. Judy Hockman was the head of school. And I think she realized that our kids needed a totally rounded education. The program, obviously the academic program, was stellar.
Yeah.
And she said, we need an athletic program. We need something for the kids, after school and even during school. So she said, how would you like to be the athletic director? Well, that was just, I couldn't ask for better than that. So I thought, okay, this is going to be great. And the nice thing that she said was, we will always support you, and you just go with it. And I thought, who could ask for anything better than this? So within the years, we started with 2 sports, and we now have, I was counting this morning, and we have 28 teams.
Oh my goodness.
So I think that one of my key ideas was to always build on the idea that we're building self-esteem.
Yeah.
Our kids are becoming better learners.
Yeah.
They're becoming advocates for themselves, and we're hoping that the same thing, it continues on in athletics.
Yeah.
That we're building the kids' self-esteem, and we're making them feel good about themselves. And ability levels, yes, they come in all different, shapes and sizes, I should say. But the thing is that they're part of the community, that they're adding to what we are as Windward, and that they're feeling good about themselves. And I think that one of the best compliments that our coaches, who are amazing, get, and our teachers, is that the parents feel like their children are learning, they're becoming advocates for themselves, and they're also feeling that they're part of the Windward community because they're taken from their schools. And I think that the sports program does help with that. And I always encourage all the parents, I say, get them involved in something here when they come here. Even if it's not the athletics, the drama program is excellent. The arts program is excellent. But this is where they're going to make friends, they're going to feel good about themselves, and they're going to be part of our community.
Yeah, and I do love and I so appreciate Judy's kind of foresight there, the idea of really thinking about the whole child in the educational kind of space here. I think you're absolutely right. We have one of the best programs in the country for what we do. I think the work we do on the academic side is just really incredible, and our kids get exactly what they need, and that actually is a massive multiplier in their long-term success. I think having the success in the classroom and then on the court, on the field, wherever they happen to be competing, it's also really, I think, really kind of fundamentally important to their overall well-being. And I think the idea that, again, coming back to this idea of growth, our kids show up in this space where sometimes they have not played basketball or in an organized manner, or they've not played soccer, or they've not played lacrosse. And we really help kids improve on that skill sort of component and grow in that space, which is, again, such an important part, because I think those kids now see themselves not only as where they didn't see themselves as good students before, they see themselves as strong students now, and where they may have not seen themselves as athletes in this space, now they're seeing themselves as that. And so I really applaud you and your entire coaching staff, your entire athletics department, and all of our phys ed teachers, who really want to share some gratitude for how amazing they are at helping build kids up in that way. So, and I think it comes from, I do think the seed of that is your enthusiasm for kids. I think your enthusiasm for growth in that space, and your willingness to really think about what kids want, and then is it even possible? And so I love that.
Right.
And we have kids who win. We have some undefeated seasons up in Westchester.
Yep.
And I'm going to give a big shout out to our girls lacrosse here. Started this is the third year for that program?
Third year for that program, yes.
Yeah, first year came in swinging hard, right? Showed up, and those girls did such an amazing job, really moving into a space, and had just an incredible season. And they have continued to build on that success. Such a great moment. So, I remember when I got in here, we spent some time talking about kind of core values, and how, as a leader, that's such an important part to, of my kind of ethos and identity when it comes to leadership. And there are, I think we all operate with a sense of values, whether we know them or not. And I think what becomes really powerful when we can kind of articulate those values. And most people can give you these 15 things are really important to me. I think the hard thing is when you kind of start to kind of really whittle those down and think about what are my top 2, because those top 2 are really, those will be very clear and evident in your day-to-day kind of how you show up in spaces, your career trajectory, the path you've taken in life. But I'd love it if you would share a little bit about, your core values as an educator, as an athlete, as a director of an athletics program. I'd love to hear a little bit about that from you.
Well, I think, community obviously is going to be key.
Yeah.
We want everybody involved. And I think that, growth and community, they're kind of hand in hand, because with athletics, we're looking to get everybody involved. So to get everybody involved, we have to find out what it is that the students really would like to be part of.
Yeah.
So I think that one of my key values has always been, all right, we could have a lot of team sports, but what about individual sports?
Yeah.
What about kids that maybe don't want to, do a team sport? So let's make sure that we have something for them. So then as I was growing the program, I was trying to make sure that there was something for everybody.
Yeah.
We have all kinds of team sports, and then some of the individual sports that we had along the way was, at one point we had fencing. There was an interest in fencing, so we said, let's try fencing.
Uh-huh.
Squash now has become a big sport, and we have a squash team. And so as you mentioned, the lacrosse team, the girls came to me and they said, we're going to be committed, Miss Hunt. We're gonna make sure we come to practices. Let's start that 7-8 girls lacrosse team.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. I said, let's give it a shot. Let's see how we do. And before we knew it, they were the undefeated team 3 years ago. We have had other undefeated teams throughout our time. And as you said, I think that the interesting thing is that we have all different ability levels.
Mm-hmm.
We tell the kids there's always going to be wins and losses.
Yeah.
However, what we're interested in is the teamwork, the building of the team, the skill that they're getting, and the confidence that they're getting. And we have on our teams, all different skill levels, as I said, and it seems to always work out.
Yeah.
And many times our kids that are more skilled are helping our kids that are, learning and growing. And I think that that's what we would want for everybody in any program that we have here at Windward, that we're growing. I think the other thing that is so important to me is impact. Yeah. I think that everybody in life wants to feel that they make a difference. Mm-hmm. And I feel like one of the things at Windward, that there's so many kids that come back and say, you saved our lives.
Yeah.
And, it sounds so meaningful, and it is so meaningful and the parents are just behind us 100%. And I just feel like it's been such a blessing to be able to feel that I've made an impact and a difference. And I feel like building the sports program for the kids has also added to not just them being confident learners, but just confident people, that they're going out and knowing that if they put their mind to something, they can do it.
Yeah.
And I think they're learning that from Windward.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that has changed my whole perspective when I first came in was that I knew I wanted to build a program. However, I think this was more in the learning aspect, and then made me see that I wanted to build on this. There was a student when I first started here. I happened to know the parent, and the student was going to look at Windward. Mm-hmm. And she was a very social 4th grader, and she wanted to come here and see what it was like, but she kept telling her mom, I'm probably not going to go there. And so anyway, she came in, and so I knew all this from her mom. She came in, she went for the half a day, and her mom was so worried when she came out, thinking, oh boy, and she ran out the door, and the mom said, I was thinking, she was going to say, no way.
Yeah.
And instead she opened the door and said, I can learn here. And I can remember in my mind thinking, that is what Windward is all about. Mm-hmm. That these students are going to go out confident learners. They've been, in some ways, many of them come with low self-esteem, but yet when they get here, they learn the program. Mm-hmm. The teachers are amazing. Yeah. They work so hard with all of the students, and they become confident learners. Yeah. And I think one of my goals became, I want them to become also confident people, confident in themselves, that if they try something, whether it be athletics, drama, art, whatever it may be, and whatever the ability level is, it's not going to matter. Yeah. They're going to go out and they're going to say, I learned something there. I'm coming out a stronger, better person, and feeling like I'm part of the Windward community. Yeah. I make a difference.
Yeah. I absolutely love everything about what you just said. And I think that, there's a few things that I want to kind of like highlight a little bit. One is the idea that kids can see progress and see the growth and see the impact of that growth. There are so many moments, and I remember as a child, I felt this way sometimes, like, this kid's just really good at that. There's no way for me to get good at that thing because I don't have that natural talent, ability, whatever it happens to be. And as I think if you want to talk about the secret of life, right, is that we're all capable of learning and growing if we're willing to put the work in and willing to kind of go through that awkward phase of being a good beginner, right? And I think our kids, especially on the athletic side, and kids who've not shown up, I think our coaches, the other kids, create such a wonderful environment for kids to actually be good beginners. Mm-hmm. Because, when was the last time, when you think about most folks, the idea of learning a new physical skill, pretty daunting. They might try it once, and if they're not good at it, it's done. Right. And I rarely claim to have a lot of strength and gifts in this world, but I think one of the things that I've always tried to do is be a good beginner. And so like whenever I try something new, even if I absolutely stink at it, like I'm willing to put the work in, and if I find myself, and I'll see like the growth and progress, and I can identify like, oh, this week I could do that, and last week I couldn't. I am a skier, and I kind of came into this as an adult like 6-7 years ago, and I've had to work really hard. But there's like a whole line of things that like I started being so terrible at it that I was embarrassed for someone even to watch me try this.
Right.
But then you put the work in and get there. And I think that's really one of the most special things about our athletics program and our PE program is that we focus on the skill and the skill development.
I think that one of the things that the parents sometimes they come in and they'll say, I'll say, well, why don't they get involved in one of the sports here? Mm-hmm. And they'll say, well, they have no background in that. And I said, well, this is the place where they're going to be able to learn. As long as they join and they try their hardest, and they give a good effort, they're going to be successful. They're going to have a successful time here.
And I think that how all of those things generate such a deeper sense of community connection in our community is really, you can't sort of like underscore that enough. Mm-hmm. But I so appreciate those two values, and I have to tell you, like watching you at field day, when you are up there like hyping everybody up and bringing everybody to the table, getting everyone excited, valuing everyone's participation, creating a day where, even if the group, the team doesn't win the whole thing, mm-hmm. like they're still coming in and having just the best time and being part of the community. So like, I feel like you live, breathe, and like exude this at every standpoint. And the same with the idea of like making a difference and like having people see like the work they're doing is having impact. I think your team sees that. I think you see that, the impact that you have on kids. And, to be quite frank, every time we have an alumni who kind of went through our middle school, like almost to a kid, there are several folks within the context of the Windward Middle School, Westchester Middle School, who always kind of come up in conversations, right? Jason Steicher, Pat Gay, Ruth Ann Mahoney, you. So like there's really some, I think there's just some real special people here, and you are certainly among that. And our kids, like your sort of impact and the work that you and your coaches have stay with kids for a really long time. So, I'd love to, because you alluded to this, and I just really, again, I so appreciate our first conversation. I just remember like the enthusiasm you had for trying to figure out like what else you could do. Right. There is no, Marilyn Hunt sleeping on the job, trying to just like push cruise control on the athletics program. It's always like every year, like, oh, these kids are asking about lacrosse. Can we make that happen? These kids are asking about baseball. Can we make that happen? These kids are asking about fencing. Can we make that happen? Like, I love that you live in the land of possibility when it comes to our athletics program. But is there anything right now that you're like kind of thinking about working on or trying to expand?
Well, this year we actually went to a track instead of, we had to use that cross country, and we thought, well, maybe, we could join track. We don't have a track. Yeah. And I think that's logistically, that is always the harder thing is you're trying to figure out how we can do things with the fields that we have, and being able to maybe rent some and make it work. So track was this year, and then lacrosse, 6th grade girls lacrosse was also added this year. Nice. And so I was thinking to myself, well, what is it that we can, possibly do next year? So I'm kind of try to poll the kids and find out what it is. And some of the sports that have come up have been field hockey. Yeah. I know we thought about swimming for a while, but finding a pool is tough. So we basically have covered most of the things that we can do logistically. But you just never really know that. One time somebody brought up archery, but we thought, well, maybe that's a little dangerous.
Well, I'm gonna say I was gonna bring it up, but I was afraid to. We had an archery team in my last school, and it actually was so great for our kids. And there's lots of ways to do this because there's a whole safety protocol. Right. We had this curtain that would like catch things and stuff. Mm-hmm. It was not a bad idea. But there was a little competition circuit in Columbus that I just remember that I would love to. My daughter participated for a while. It was great.
Next year we're actually thinking of adding pickleball.
Really?
So I'm a big pickleball
fan.
So.
I know, yeah.
So we were thinking about adding that. So there's things that get brought up over the years, and then of course we sit and we say to ourselves, can this really happen? Yeah. And we try to, like I said, see what the kids want to do. I mean, that's the important thing. Yeah. Because then we know they'll be committed. they'll want to do it, and it'll end up being something that will be successful.
So I made a note here: pickleball lesson with Marilyn Hunt. Okay, I've got you down. So we'll make sure we find some time, because my daughter and I, she plays tennis at her high school, and so we've been trying to find some things to do. We used to ski together, and then, she stopped joining me on the ski trip, because she was like, I wanted to rather hang out in Irvington with my friends. And I'm like, yeah, and I get it. She's of that age, but she's 16, and just her friends are so important to her, and I love that she's got this amazing group of friends. But I'm trying to find some fun things we can do together. So I put myself in a very sort of like good beginner mindset, and I'm trying to learn to play tennis with her. She plays for her high school, but we also want to maybe do pickleball. That might be the great equalizer here.
That would be the equalizer.
So because so I may have to actually get a lesson from you in the process of figuring out how I can get better at this. But I'd love to shift gears a little bit. So you do so much great work for kids. You really dedicate so much of your time, and you've dedicated so much of your life and energy to serving our kids and families here at Windward. Saturday afternoon, what does Marilyn Hunt do to take care of herself in the process of being ready to show up with this boundless energy, this incredible enthusiasm that you bring?
I do think some downtime is important.
Yeah, it is.
Always need a balance. Everybody needs a balance in life. I think family and friends, of course, are primary importance. I also love to read, which is just a nice downtime type thing. I do have trouble just being quiet and not doing anything.
I think you and I have that in common.
Yeah, so I usually do have still some sports that I'm involved in that I really enjoy. Pickleball has become one of them. I've become a great fan of it.
Are you nationally ranked yet?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. I like that.
And I still snowboard, so I love that. I really enjoy that. And I'm still playing a little bit of softball here and there.
Yeah.
So, and trying to do some, power walking and a little bit of running here and there when I can.
Yeah, so any good books or podcasts that you're kind of digging into right now?
So one of our physical education teachers, Hunter Bernard, listens to Against All Odds. And it's about people who are doing extreme hiking or biking, or it doesn't even matter what they're doing, but they live through some tragic things that happen to them on the trail or on the bike, and it's just amazing what someone can actually do to be able to survive.
I love those stories. I think even when they're terrible, right? I had read, was it Into Thin Air, and then Into the Wild, all these books, Into this too. Whatever. Yep. But and on those two moments, someone didn't live through those. But there's some people who did live through the Into Thin Air sort of experience. But it really is. It makes you, one, grateful to be alive. It makes you grateful for your health. It makes you grateful for all your limbs. It makes you grateful for all the stuff, right? And I really think it's those kinds of stories can really kind of inspire you to do some great stuff. So. Right,
and not be afraid to do them,
Yeah, and I think that we don't talk about that enough, is how often fear holds us back in certain ways, because it's even with our kids in athletics, the fear of being embarrassed, or the fear of someone not thinking you're good, the fear of all this fear can get in kids' way, even from a reading perspective, the fear of reading out loud, or someone finding out that I can't spell this thing. And so I just, I think that's one of those things we should really normalize conversations around, is as adults, we find ourselves in moments all the time where we're afraid of stuff, and yet we show up and do. And so,
grow
from that experience.
For ourselves and for our other students,
Well, I so appreciate, Marilyn, your willingness to show up to provide that really good example for kids, and I would say for staff, to show up in the middle of a little bit of fear, and worry, because I was thinking about today, I know you're not the biggest fan of sitting down and talking in sort of moments like this, although you're a really big fan of sitting down and having great conversations, because we get to have a lot of those, and I really appreciate them. But I appreciate you showing up in today and being willing to share your story with our community, because it's a really fantastic story. Thank you for everything that you do for our kids, for our families, for our athletics program, for our coaches, for our teachers. You are such a valuable member of this community, and it's just been a pleasure to sit down and have this time with you today.
Well, thank you, Jamie, and I appreciate being able to talk about the athletic program, and just my years here have been terrific, and I just want to also just thank everybody, all the administrators that have supported the program all the years through. There's always been such a big support So I just...
It's an easy place to be supportive because you guys are doing incredible work. I think kids are getting what they need, and it's just been great to see our kids come in and see this wonderful sense of accomplishment that they get from participating in our program here. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah. Well, first off, Dan, I want to say a big welcome to the podcast here. I am very, very excited to have a conversation with you today. As I'd mentioned in the first half of the episode, we had the venerable, Marilyn Hunt on, an institution here. I know the two of you have worked really closely in your role here. And this is is it 17 for you? 15. So sorry. Well, I added 2 years. I think last time we talked, I took 2 from you. So
time
now I'm making stuff up here in terms of making up some time on you there. But time does fly. You're 15. What an incredible career here at Windward. And I just want to, as we started off, a big part of the process here is kind of opening up with a little bit of gratitude. Here in the city, my office is close to the stairway, as you know. So often I get to hear the rumble of our gym on like a Tuesday afternoon when there's some game down there happening. And I love making my way down and actually getting a chance to see the kids play, seeing the parents up in the stands. As Marilyn and I talked yesterday about this, I absolutely love the work we do in our athletics program for so many reasons. And I think you have really picked that work up from Westchester, brought this down here, and really lived and breathed that here. And I think that what this has done for our community here on the Manhattan campus has been wonderful. But what I love about our athletics program, first and foremost, is that we don't see ourselves, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, as talent identifiers, right? We don't set up as, I don't think you all set as coaches and say, that kid's really good. Let me play that kid for the entire game, right? We have kids who are really good, so that's not the comment at all. But I think what our coaching staff and I think what the ethos with which you bring to the table every single day you're here is about how do we help kids grow in their process and get a little better today than they were yesterday and see themselves as progressing in a spot. I think we're such a great place for kids to be good beginners. But I also really appreciate your focus on teamwork and sportsmanship and the work that you do to kind of really help kids feel seen, supported in the athletics program here is really, truly fantastic. I think it's inspirational for our kids and families, and I cannot thank you enough for the great work that you do to make sure
That's
kids
greatly
have
appreciated.
such a wonderful experience in our athletics program here. And not only with your student focus on the work here, your focus on sportsmanship and teamwork. Like sometimes, and I think I've said this to you last time we chat in prep for this. Like I've gotten emails from other heads of school who were like, my athletic director came back from a game at Windward and just wanted you to know Dan Smith is a class act. The way he runs a program, just so grateful. And so I've heard some really good feedback, not just in our community, which I know I've shared with you, but out into the greater sort of independent school kind of network here, because I think you help us really shine in that space. And so not only have you been helping build out a really community-supportive, student-focused, growth-oriented athletics program here in the Manhattan campus, but we've also been winning a little bit too. Let's just not to brag a little bit. Yeah. Let's just brag a little bit about our kids. We have 9 league championships.
9 league championships,
which is
in
just,
three different sports.
Yeah, which is just incredible. And I have to tell you, and I'm going to give Coach B a big shout out here. Watching our girls basketball team go from, I just remember, and I don't want, first game of the season, like maybe 3 years ago, talking to a couple of parents in the stands. It was a rough start to the season.
They always
are. We had some girls who had never played basketball before, but showed up with just so much heart, so much determination. And they progressed all season. Coach B really pushed them in such a beautiful way, brought those girls together as a team. They were playing so well, and they ended up winning their league championship. Like the tears on these young ladies' faces as they were coming through this work here. They had a repeat the next year. And then the third year, setting down for the championship was probably one of the most electric games. I know our boys had the game the next night.
Yeah.
Like the atmosphere in our gym over those 2 days, the only way it can be described is electric. Like it was just incredible. It was like watching a Knicks game.
It didn't feel like a middle school. I was in the gym and I couldn't believe we were at Windward. It was a beautiful moment.
I I was there in the midst, and my heart rate was like up. I was like, my palms were sweaty. I was so like excited. I even went down on the court side for a little bit as you guys were like doing your thing. It was just incredible. And I just want to say thank you for everything you've done to help make that spirit, that school spirit we have in that space just really, really alive.
Thank you. The recognition is appreciated. And I tell the students and I tell our coaches all the time what our senior admin does to support our athletic program. We can't do it without, the green lights you guys give us. And we just have a ton of support that goes from, financially with being able to get the right equipment and ship these kids all over the city to different games. And it doesn't, it comes with a fee, but also just the moral support that goes a long way as well. And we also have great parents too.
Yeah,
our parents are so supportive. I mean, we were just talking about the atmosphere and the environment at our games. It's really a beautiful sight to see. It wasn't like that wasn't my experience when I played in middle school. And I love what we have. We all appreciate it. But thank you.
Yeah. No, I think it's you guys make us proud. I think you help us shine. And I think when you have a school that is so again, I do believe this wholeheartedly. We are, I think, one of the best schools in the country for what we do. Right, our academic program is second to none. And now I feel like we have really thought about it and how we've really strategically pushed on the whole kind of child experience here. Our drama program, our art program, our athletics program, our after school care program, all these things have really helped us, I think, kind of round out in a big way a child's experience here at Windward and a family's experience. And so while nothing's ever perfect, in terms of how we, I know we've got folks who wish we would do more of this and more of that. And we're trying always, and I so appreciate everything that you bring and Marilyn brings to that to help enhance the work of our families and the experience they have here. And I know in athletics, I mean, it's you throw a rock at a school and they have an athletics program there, right? So everybody's doing this work. It's the rarity that you have schools at this point that don't do this work. So you could actually do this work in a lot of places, Dan. Like I have like the faith in your ability that you could probably you could be athletic directors in a lot of spots and probably be really successful in that. But you're here and we're grateful you're here. So why Windward? What brings you to this program and calls you to kind of work with these kids for the last 15 years? Like what kind of gets you out of bed and helps you kind of make that commitment every day?
Well, Windward's a special place. Of course, I wouldn't have spent 15 years of my life in the many buildings that we have if I didn't feel that way. You've actually
worked in all of them, haven't you?
Yeah, for a little bit of time in all of them. Lower school, not that much, but a little bit of time in all of them. And one of the things that stood out when I started 15 years ago, I was an assistant teacher, was the time and energy and effort that was put into developing the assistant teachers. Yeah. And I said to myself, through the Windward Institute, the teacher training programs, the staff development. We on Fridays our kids get dismissed at 1:30, and we're spending an hour and a half, sometimes even a little bit longer, developing our staff with the latest research and or bringing in speakers. And there were so many details that went into professional development, and that went a long way with me. And I knew I could grow here and continue to grow, and that's one of my life missions. I never want to become stagnant. I always want to grow and get better in anything I do, and I knew I could do that here. But the support that came with it, and it was genuine support from the faculty, staff, and senior admin across the board. I saw that, and people poured into me. It went a long way with me, and it's a community that once you're in it, you understand it's a special place, and I enjoy it here every day, and here I am.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate that, and I'm so grateful that you're here and that you choose to spend some time here developing our athletics program into what an incredible sort of thing that it is today. I think we have a lot to be proud of in our community, and I think this is a moment where our kids really get to shine. And I think, it's hard when our kids show up here. They're working on the thing that's the absolute hardest for them. They're reading, they're writing, their spelling, sometimes their mathematics, their student skills, all those things. They show up and really put a lot of courage in. And I think for a school to kind of really walk that walk in terms of athletics program and allow a child who has, there's you hear families sometimes, they can't do that. We've never played soccer. They've never played basketball before. And we're like, that is not a barrier here, right? Bring them in, come one, come all. We're going to figure out how to help you grow in this space. And it's one of those things that like as I'd like to think that I have a little bit of athletic sort of, space in me, and I do a little work in that, a lot of cycling and a lot of other, some rock climbing here at times and a lot of other things. But I've always been a good beginner. I've always had that ability to show up and like push through the embarrassment of absolutely being terrible at something at the beginning. And, and I really appreciate that we have a program here that really kind of celebrates and cultivates that idea. One of the things that I've talked about in the last 6 years is this idea of, as a leader, core values are just deeply important to me. And how do we think about, as we show up, there are always some guiding principles in our work, right? Whether we name them or not, like, there's things that kind of push our work and our behavior forward a little bit. And it was really important to me when I got here to help us think about what are the values of Windward, because there was a lot of things I could see from my space in the Midwest, and like this is really where I see them doing some really amazing things. And when those kind of values kind of came through and really kind of shined, I think it's been helpful to think about when we're making decisions to kind of bring back to that idea of what are our values, what are the things that are most important to us in service of our mission. I don't know if you've had a chance to kind of really reflect or think about, your values as a human being and what you kind of how you show up in this space. But I'd love if you have, I'd love to hear a little bit about that reflection.
I have a handful of core values, but just to state a few. One would be commitment. I think it's important to finish whatever you start and work through the ups and downs and the problems, and that develops character. Here at Windward, the work we do is everlasting, and it never stops, and you have to be committed. And there's going to be, good days, bad days, and understanding that it's a process. And we're encouraging and trying to get our students to understand that it's a process. So we have to kind of embody that as well and understand that it doesn't happen overnight, and you just have to chip away. And little by little, you start to see the difference, see the change, see that student learning to read, see that student who can now make a layup and couldn't hit the rim at the first day of practice. So commitments definitely one of my core values. Another one is respect. My parents raised me to, give and show respect, and that's how you kind of get it in return. But it also helps develop trust. When you respect someone, whether you have differences, you can really foster a relationship and work together and get things done. And that's what life's about, right? So that's definitely one of my core values that I stand by and stand on.
I see those things in action in you, right? And I so appreciate what you said about finishing what you start. I think sometimes our kids show up in a space where, the idea of getting to that finish line is so daunting. And what does the end of that look like? What does good look like sometimes? And I really appreciate that that notion of like helping kids understand, especially on the athletic side of things, whether you're on the court, the field, whatever sort of the competition medium happens to be, to kind of show up and really bring your best and commit to the outcome there, because I think it's such an important piece. And I do love I love just how that kind of like shows up. So I want to make sure you get a chance to finish some core value.
Just two more would be accountability. For our students, a lot of their prior experiences, they were in places where, they were doubted. They were called lazy, and really just torn down. And when they show up here, they're afraid to put themselves out there or to admit that they don't know how to do something or to even self-advocate. For me, and let me start with myself. For me, I think going back to that idea of trust, when you show students, when you show your coworkers or even your family members that you can take ownership of being wrong or not getting it right or not having the answer, it develops trust, and it also it shows that it gives them an opportunity to be a little bit more vulnerable, and that's important. Open up, and it really, I think it all ties into relationships, and working with others. So I think taking ownership is being accountable is really important, and it also forces you to reflect, and think about how to be better and how to improve. That's definitely one of my core values. And then lastly, I'd say just to be ambitious. Life's hard. The work we do is hard. We're in New York, really competitive, challenging place and state. And you have to show up every day with a little bit of drive, and put the work forward. And I enjoy doing that.
Yeah. Well, I want to maybe come back to a thing on respect, because I do think I love the conversation around respect and how we show up in this space, and I do see that. I'm so glad your family instilled that work in you, that sort of idea in you at a young age. I think my family had a very similar sort of feel and vibe around respect. And when in working with kids, one of the things that I've always found really fascinating is that there's some people who I'm not going to show someone respect until they show me respect, and that's never been how I show up, right? I'm going to give all the grace in the world, and I'm going to show up even with kids, I'm not going to wait for it to come my way before I give it to them, right? Because it's a gift that I give freely, and I want to make sure they understand that's a free gift, right? And I'm going to show them respect. I'm going to show them that I care about who they are. And I have found when you show up in that sort of posture, 9.5 times out of 10, it comes right back to you, right? Even in the middle of challenging conversations or difficulties, showing up with a sense of respect, I think helps a lot of the work kind of move forward, and being open to different different sort of viewpoints and perspectives. But I do think showing up with that, and I like to give it away pretty freely at the get-go, and then often it comes back my way. And if it doesn't, I don't take it too personally. But we can all move in that space. But I so appreciate you sharing those.
Absolutely.
At any given point, in your work, I think that, athletic director, kind of space, there's so much directing of traffic, right? Proverbial traffic. Sometimes actual traffic out there, but out on the street. But the idea of, you've got all these things to schedule, you've got all these coaches to coordinate, you've got all these kids to kind of get into the right spot, you've got all these safety components that you have to think through. And, I would imagine you try to leave a little bit of space in that to think about, how did we do last year? What were our big strengths? What were our big wins? What were our big successes? And what are areas that we might want to kind of try to get a little bit better at this year? Yeah. Is there anything within the context of your work as the athletic director that you're you know what? As Windward, we're trying to get a little bit better at this, or I'm working on this for our kids and families?
Absolutely. I am very reflective, and I'm constantly thinking about how to improve our program. Yeah. And that's just the Windward way. That goes from, the classroom, of course, into athletics. Across the board. There's a few things. One being many years ago when I started in the PE program, Marilyn, we were going through our units, and I was working under Marilyn Hunt. I was one of her PE teachers, and she was showing me the different units that we do. Yeah. And one was pickleball, and I didn't know a thing about pickleball. And this is 15 years ago.
Coming up again.
And I was, she was informing me about the sport. I looked at some videos. I got to, I started to learn how to teach it. And by year 3, I'm like, this is a great sport. Yeah. And anytime we would have parent-teacher conferences or back to school night, and we kind of go over our PowerPoint presentation, we would list pickleball as one of the units that we cover throughout the year. And so many parents would raise their hand, what's pickleball, what's going on? And we talk about it a little bit and give them a brief kind of synopsis of what the game looks like. And then years later, fast forward into last year, maybe 2 years ago, all of a sudden it just explodes. And all these different, all throughout the city and the country, people are playing it. So one of my goals is to start a pickleball team. We have some really talented, we have some really talented pickleball players, a lot of tennis players, but the skills are very familiar. And we have a lot of students that are skilled in it. They're familiar with the sport. And so I really want to, I presented it to the league. We have a middle school athletic league that we're part of. And I presented it to the league actually 2 weeks ago. And I'm starting to work on some rules and trying to get that off the ground. And great. So I want to add another sport to our listings and offerings. For our middle schoolers, for our lower schoolers, it's so important that they play and that they move. And we do have a lot of offerings and programs for them, but I want to get them more athletic programs. So I've been working on and looking at some spaces that we could rent and use so we can have more athletic, specifically athletic offerings for our lower schoolers. I think our parents would appreciate that. Yeah. And it would help bridge the gap when our lower schoolers get into middle school. They're a little bit familiar with some of these sports, understand the rules to some of these sports. And of course, some of our middle schoolers, lower schoolers play in outside leagues or programs. But I'd love for us to be doing that and kind of, leading the way.
Yeah. I think that for someone who didn't grow up in this area or go to school in New York City, the layers of complication for athletics programs, let's just take a moment, right? So many places don't have gyms, so the idea of getting gym space is huge. So many places don't have outdoor space for play, for any kind of like running. Luckily, we're near Central Park, and we can like pop over and do some stuff across country. But like a lot of places don't have that kind of access. And every time I talk to a school who plays here, they're like, "Oh my God, your gym is beautiful!" Like they're just gushing it. And then I've visited schools, and I'm like, "Oh, now I know why they say that."
There's no gym that looks like ours in New York City, especially at the middle school level.
And it's just really nice. But it is like it is you're solving a Rubik's Cube every season on like many levels, like 3-dimensional chess here, trying to figure out where our kids can play, what do we have access to, how are we going to transport them there, all that. Like it's just I think the layers of complication in the work that you're doing is just big. But it's just been fun to see how creative our team is in the process of solving some of those problems or finding partnerships. And I'm so glad you mentioned pickleball, because Marilyn was talking about that in her sort of chunk of this episode, this double episode, and her love for it and how that they've worked to kind of do that. And so I'm excited, because I do think a lot of folks have family members, sometimes some grandparents who are staying really active, because the community around that is actually really, really big right now. So thank you for doing a little work to expand and introduce our kids to something that they may be able to have some real bonding moments with some other family members who they love and adore. So I think there's two big wins here for me.
Just to add to that, I'm sorry, as far as growing our athletic and really our PE program, the last piece I'd say is with myself and our PE team, we spend so much time after school with the kids downstairs in the gym and trying to be more present. So we've taken on a few new initiatives. Once a week, we try to be out front for arrivals, just to greet the kids. So the parents, a lot of the parents, we have working parents. They don't always get to come to our games. So to put a face behind who the coach is or who the PE teachers are. So we've been trying to at least once a week, sometimes more, but be present outside in the front of the building, and also within the building, trying to come upstairs more to not hold duty, but just be in the halls when classes are changing or when the periods are changing. And then we also the month of March, all of the PE teachers, we all picked 2 or 3 lower school classes and we did a read aloud, which was really nice. And that was it was a great opportunity for the lower schoolers to see us in a different setting. And it was also a great opportunity for us to see our students in an academic setting.
I love it.
Because so many of our students show up and they're really confident and they're great athletes. And then to see them in an academic setting where they're a little bit more reserved, it gives you a better understanding of the whole child. So it was great. That's something we look to continue to do. But more and more, we're just trying to figure out ways where we can be more present and stay connected to the school.
Thank you.
Not that we aren't, but
no, you're very connected to school. I mean, I see your whole team out and about all the time, and I think you've got such a great team down there.
Thank you.
Really,
they are a good bunch.
They care about kids. They care about athletics. They care about being healthy and keeping movement. And let's just sort of like take a moment to do a big plug for all the incredibly engaging games they come up with. Like sometimes I'm like, help me understand what's happening
going on
here. This looks like such an amazingly organized sense of chaos that I love it. And the kids are like having so much fun, and whatever game they've like sort of like created for the kids.
Can I interrupt one more time? I also we mentioned Marilyn Hunt, and I'm so thankful for her. I did want to just shout her out. She's been here for 40 plus years.
42 this year.
Which is incredible when you take a step back to think, think about how much work has been done and how much work she's put in. I worked hand in hand with her, but she really mentored me coming into this position, and a lot of the practices and that I use and a lot of the games we play were all borrowed or stolen from her, and I really do appreciate all that she's done for our school and dedicating 40 years to our school. 40 plus years
about you, so I think she appreciates your partnership and all that. So. As I asked Marilyn, and I try to ask a lot of our everybody who's come on this our little podcast here, this work is hard, and I think one of the things that I have never tried to underscore enough is, or never try to kind of like short sell, is like how hard this work is for kids, because we have kids showing up who I believe we should be bringing our absolute best to, right? We've got some complicated language learning challenges here, and I think it requires us to bring our best to the work. Even in the athletics program, even in our art program, to help think about how do we help all of our kids grow in skills? How do we help them show up and be their best? How do we help them feel a sense of success? All those things. So the work's not easy. And my hope is that you do some things to kind of really take care of yourself. It's the old put your own oxygen mask on first, right? Yeah. I know for me, like the bike, if I'm not on my bike, I am not my best self. I'm not the best human being I can possibly be. So that idea of maintaining some really good, healthy physical activity components in my life is just like, to say it's essential would be like the largest understatement I could. I'm just a better person. So what do you do to take care of yourself and allow you to recharge a little bit?
Well, to your point, I definitely exercise, and I try to eat healthy. I do eat pretty healthy, and I am conscious of, my food intake. But also something a few years ago, I got caught in a space where I just felt like there was a disconnect to the community. And I wasn't as happy and as positive as I typically am.
Yeah.
And I started just being a lot more intentional about spending time speaking and staying connected with our faculty members. I have a great relationship with our faculty, and they mean a lot to me, and we all work together. But I think it's important to have conversations that are outside of work, away from, not about the work specifically, just to continue to foster those relationships. And that's something I've been very intentional about, and it's gone a long way. Sometimes I'll take a break from my computer and go up to the faculty lounge to make tea. And it's not really about the tea. It's to see if I see someone on the way there and hold a little conversation, ask them how they're doing, catch up with them after practices, to spend that extra 10, 15 minutes talking to my coaches and being there to support them, or even inviting people into my office. I have been at Windward a long time. I've worn many hats, assisting teaching LA and lead teaching social studies. So just letting our faculty know I'm there for them, but really just developing those relationships. It goes a long way. And, you don't realize sometimes by giving how much you receive. And that's something I've been very intentional about. So that's definitely helped keep me refreshed. A little bit of reading. Getting to bed earlier, of course, which is a challenge, but I've definitely been intentional about that as well. And I think not taking yourself so serious as well, and sometimes understanding that there's bigger issues than yours, and just being grateful. And I've been intentional about that. Once a week, I jot down 3 things I'm grateful for. And then at some point in the following week, I reflect on those things. And that goes a long way. And you wake up feeling a lot more positive and appreciative, and it gives you perspective.
Yeah, I would agree. Totally agree. I think that, one kind of maintaining, kind of being in community. That's what I've always kind of referred to, that idea of like, and there's times, coming out of the pandemic, it was a stressful time. Like I've had some days where I'm like, I'm having a hard time getting off the floor, because we've, it's because the work is hard. We have a lot of demands on us as a school. We have, the world has just been really stressful for the last 5-6 years. It's been a lot going. There's always something happening in the world, right? That finds its way into our work in some ways. And so, but the idea of holding each other in community and being there, being supportive, being generous with our time, and our extension of grace, I would offer, assuming that folks are showing up with positive intention. And also, I love the idea of, this idea that you never know what burden someone else is carrying. Right? We all, no matter who we are, we all have these little things that we have to work through, dealing with, that are seen and unseen, right? And so it's the unseen burdens sometimes that I think that we got to be the most careful about. But I really appreciate your sort of willingness to show up in community. I appreciate your desire to kind of help lift up our kids. I appreciate everything you do to help, kind of keep yourself engaged in this work here, because we're so glad you're here. And I think you have built such a tremendous program here on the Manhattan campus. So thank you for everything you've done for that.
Thank you.
And it's really been a pleasure, Dan. As always, whenever we have a chance to talk, I always enjoy it, and I just really appreciate everything you done for our kids and families. So thank you for that. And thanks for being on the podcast.
The feeling's mutual, Jamie. My RP teachers always talk about how excited they are when you come in and you play with the kids, and and you're jumping in to be what's the game? Oscar. And the kid goes a long way with the kids too. And I know it might be only 5 minutes of your day, and
but it's sometimes the best 5 minutes I got.
But the kids really appreciate it, and so do teachers. It goes such a long way. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And even being present at the games, we know busy your schedule is, but it means a lot to us.
I so appreciate that. But you've got a great team. I adore them all. And it recharges me, like I spend way too much of my time on Zoom, way too much of my time in running around to different meetings. But like when I get a moment to pop into a classroom or spend time down in the gym, like I leave with something. So thank you for that. It means a lot.
Absolutely.
So. And I look forward to seeing how the rest of the seasons kind of shape up, and maybe we can get 10 or 11 here.
We're working on
championships. So, but thanks so much, Dan.
Absolutely, thank you for your time.
Yeah.